In October 1972, a chartered flight carrying 45 passengers, including a Uruguayan rugby team, vanished into the snowy peaks of the Andes Mountains. The world held its breath, hoping for a miracle, but what emerged was a tale of survival, desperation, and unthinkable choices. Stay with us as we uncover the harrowing story of the Andes flight disaster, the crash. On October 13, 1972, the Fairchild Feft 227, a twin-engine turboprop aircraft operated by the Uruguayan Air Force, departed Montevideo, Uruguay on a routine flight to Santiago, Chile. On board were 45 passengers, including the Old Christians Club rugby team, their friends, family members, and 5 crew members. Spirits were high as the team joked and laughed, excited for their upcoming match in Chile. The flight route was supposed to be straightforward, but weather conditions in the Andes posed a significant challenge. Thick clouds and turbulent winds blanket the mountains, forcing the pilots to make a risky decision to alter their course. They intended to navigate through a narrow pass, trusting their instruments to guide them safe, but something went horribly wrong. Misjudging their position, the pilots began descending prematurely, believing they were past the mountains. Instead, they were directly above the Andes' towering peaks. At 3:34 p.m., the aircraft slammed into the side of a mountain, tearing off one of its wings. The impact sent the plane hurtling across the snow-covered slopes, eventually coming to a stop on a glacier nearly 12,000 feet above sea level. The crash was catastrophic. 12 people were killed instantly and several more were critically injured. Among the survivors, screams of pain and cries for help echoed through the icy air. The wreckage was partially buried in snow, and the freezing temperatures made even basic movement a struggle. Those who could move worked desperately to free trapped passengers and tend to the wounded, using what little resources they had. By nightfall, 33 passengers remained alive, huddled together in the broken fuselage for warmth. They had no idea how isolated they were, stranded in one of the most inhospitable environments on Earth, with no immediate hope of rescue. The harsh reality of survival. As the initial shock of the crash subsided, the survivors faced the grim reality of their situation. The high altitude made breathing difficult, and the biting cold pierced through their thin clothing. The meager supplies salvaged from the wreckage included a few bars of chocolate, some wine, and a handful of crackers, hardly enough to sustain 33 people for more than a few days. The survivors showed incredible ingenuity in their efforts to adapt. They tore seat cushions apart to use as makeshift blankets and created crude snow goggles from pieces of plastic to protect their eyes from snow blindness. They even rationed the wine by pouring it into bottle caps, ensuring everyone received an equal share. But their biggest challenge was food. By the 5th day, the survivors had eaten everything edible, including toothpaste and the leather from luggage straps. With their bodies weakening, the group was faced with an unthinkable decision. In order to live, they would have to consume the flesh of their deceased friends. The decision was agonizing and not made lightly. Survivors later described the act as a purely rational choice, one born out of the instinct to survive. They approached it with solemnity and a deep respect for the deceased, many of whom had been their teammates and closest friends. Religious faith played a significant role for some, as they viewed the act as a form of communion. Even with this source of sustenance, survival was far from guaranteed. The harsh conditions made every moment a battle. Frostbite, hypothermia, and infections became constant threats. Yet the group showed remarkable resilience, supporting one another and using their collective willpower to push through the unimaginable hardships. False hope. On the 11th day after the crash, a small breakthrough offered a glimmer of hope. While searching the wreckage, one of the survivors found a battery-powered transistor radio. As the group huddled around, desperate for news, they were devastated by what they heard. The search for Flight 571 had been called off. Rescue teams, unable to locate any trace of the plane in the vast mountainous terrain, believed the passengers could not have survived the crash in freezing conditions. The announcement was a crushing blow. The realization that they were entirely on their own sent waves of despair through the group. Despite the heartbreaking news, the survivors refused to give up. In the face of overwhelming odds, leaders emerged within the group, inspiring resilience and unity. Nando Parado, whose determination became a driving force, took on a leadership role alongside Roberto Canessa, a medical student. Together they motivated their fellow survivors, encouraging them to remain hopeful and proactive. The group began organizing themselves, establishing routines to preserve energy and distribute tasks. Some focused on maintaining the fuselage as a shelter, while others ventured into the snow to search for additional supplies or scout the surrounding terrain. Parado and Canessa spearheaded discussions about a potential expedition to find help, planting seeds of hope for an eventual escape. Although they had no idea how long they could hold out, the group made a pact to fight for survival no matter what. They knew that if they gave in to despair, their chances of making it out alive would disappear entirely. For battling the elements, the Andes Mountains showed no mercy. As the days turned into weeks, the survivors were exposed to unrelenting challenges. Temperatures regularly plunged well below freezing at night, forcing the group to huddle together for warmth inside the shattered fuselage. The icy wind howled through the cracks, chilling them to their bones. Each night was a test of endurance, as hypothermia loomed as a constant threat. But it wasn't just the cold they had to contend with. Nature itself seemed determined to claim them. Avalanches were an ever-present danger in the steep, snow-covered terrain. Every rumble from the mountains above sent shivers down their spines, each sound a possible prelude to disaster. Then, on a bitterly cold night, the unthinkable happened. A massive avalanche roared down the mountainside, swallowing the wreckage in an instant. 8 survivors were suffocated under the crushing weight of snow, leaving the remaining 16 in a state of utter devastation. Trapped in darkness, they worked desperately to dig themselves out, clawing through the snow with frozen fingers and limited oxygen. Hours passed before they finally broke through to the surface. The avalanche was a cruel reminder of how fragile their existence had become. For days after, the group mourned their lost friends and teammates. Yet, even in their grief, the survivors refused to succumb to despair. They knew that giving up was not an option. "We are alive," one survivor reportedly said, "and that means we still have a chance." As the days dragged on, their bodies grew weaker from hunger and the punishing conditions. Yet the human spirit proved resilient. The survivors began to focus on a new plan: escape. They understood that rescue was unlikely and that their only hope lay in finding help themselves. Nando Parado and Roberto Canessa, 2 of the fittest survivors, stepped forward as volunteers. But despite having endured the same hardships as the rest, they displayed an extraordinary will to act. The group rallied around them, offering moral support and preparing them for the monumental journey ahead. The duo began training their bodies as best as they could in such extreme conditions. They conducted practice hikes around the wreckage, testing their endurance and adapting to the thin mountain air. Others in the group contributed by fashioning crude supplies to aid their trek. They crafted insulated footwear using seat covers and built makeshift backpacks to carry what little food they could spare. Every detail was carefully considered. This journey would be their lifeline. The survivors pooled their collective resources to support Pareto and Canessa. They rationed the scant remaining food supplies to ensure the pair had enough strength to embark on their trek. The emotional bonds deepened as the group placed their hopes in the 2 men, believing that their bravery might just be the key to their salvation. Before departing, the 2 trekkers absorbed every ounce of encouragement from their fellow survivors. One by one, their companions shared quiet words of support, expressions of gratitude, and fervent prayers for their success. It was a moment of solidarity, a reminder that even in the direst circumstances, hope could still shine through. Parado and Canessa were acutely aware of the risks ahead. The mountains stretched endlessly in every direction, an unforgiving expanse of snow, ice, and rock. The journey would be grueling, with no guarantees of survival, but their resolve was unwavering. They were determined to reach civilization and bring back help for their friends. As they prepared to set out, the group watched them with tearful eyes. Though fear lingered in everyone's heart, it was outweighed by the fragile hope that this journey might mark the beginning of their rescue. This extended scene captures the intensity of the survivors' struggle against nature, their shared resilience, and the extraordinary bravery of those who took on the challenge of seeking help. On December 12th, after more than 2 months in the mountains, Pareto and Canessa began their expedition. Armed with minimal supplies and immense determination, they climbed peaks over 15,000 feet high, battling altitude sickness and snow blindness. For 10 grueling days, they trekked through the Andes until they encountered a Chilean farmer who alerted authorities. For the first time, rescue was within reach. The rescue. On December 20th, 72 days after the crash, rescuers reached the remaining survivors. 16 people had endured unspeakable hardship and emerged alive. The world was captivated by their resilience and the lengths they went to survive. Their story made headlines worldwide, sparking debates, documentaries, and books. The survivors openly shared their experiences, emphasizing that their actions were driven by necessity, not choice. The Andes flight disaster remains one of the most harrowing survival stories in history. It's a testament to human resilience, ingenuity, and the will to live against impossible odds. Would you have made the same choices to survive? Let us know in the comments.